That's what happens when you do not understand the topic and then you try to paraphrase. You sound crazy. So it's very obvious to a teacher when you don't understand if you're trying to put it in your own words. It's like, well, let's see. That sure does sound like Gavin. What? But boy, was that crazy speak. Gavin doesn't get this. I'm just using you by way of example, Gavin. Thank you.
What did I do?
You didn't do anything yet. That's the good part. All right. So the next thing, besides getting it and understanding it, is I would suggest you take a couple notes on it. Write down some key ideas from the sentences so that your brain doesn't have to remember all of it. Remember, it's new information, so you're not supposed to have it memorized, but you still might need like little hooks, little key words and phrases just to help you be able to say it out loud. Now, you might take those key hooks, those words and phrases, and use a thesaurus and change some of those into other words. So if something says grand, you might say large. If something says atmosphere, you might say sky. So you might switch out some words before you get to the next step. Because the next step is tell a friend or tell your brain. So you got to tell it. So you've got to be able to speak it before you can write it. If you can't say it out loud, it's going to be nonsense. It's going to be run-ons. It's going to be fragments. So this is really important. When I say tell a friend, I mean like look back at your key words and then think of a way to flip the sentence around and start with the end instead of what the original start had been. So start at the end of your words and see if you can make a sentence working from the bottom up. And if you can make a sentence out loud, then you will know, okay, hey, that sounded really good, because your own ears will have heard it. Or maybe you will have said it to your mom or your dad, and they say, wow, that sounds great, that makes sense. And then write it down as your paraphrased sentence. So that last step, actually describe it in your own voice. Your own voice. So use it in your own words. You may have used a thesaurus to get some alternate words. That's good. But you can't just suck out a word and put one in. No. It's plagiarism. Okay? All right. One other thing I want you to be aware of is that when you are writing in your own voice, it should not sound like dictionary voice. It shouldn't sound like Wikipedia voice. It shouldn't sound like your mommy or your daddy's voice. It should sound like your voice. And here's the thing. We as teachers, we talk to you, so we know what your voices sound like. So when I hear your writing, it should sound like, oh yes, this sounds like Ava. Yes, this is Ava. This is Ava explaining to me about the oceans and the plastics in the oceans. Totally sounds like her. Whereas if I turn around and say, well, gee whiz, Ava, you sound just like Wikipedia. Then do you know what I do? I copy, paste it in the URL box, enter, and then up pops Wikipedia with the highlighted portion, and boom, busted. Okay? Busted. So, it's super important that you learn this process of how to take hard things and eventually paraphrase it in your own words. Now, one of the biggest things I can tell you to do, if you don't understand it, look up a picture of it or go onto YouTube and watch a video about it. Most of you have grown up in a very visual environment. You understand things that you can see. So go onto YouTube and type in some of those key words and maybe see if you can watch a few videos so that you have some of the knowledge and the background information so that when you come back to the written work that you're trying to include or the magazine that you're trying to use as a source, then you can be like, oh yeah, I get this now because I watched such a video. In fact, just to kind of put it out there, when I don't understand something, I go to YouTube and I type in the word kids first. So when I don't understand how to explain paraphrasing versus plagiarizing, I don't want the college level version. I type in kids explanation paraphrasing, enter, watch a few videos on it. Kids explanation plagiarizing, watch a few videos on it. And then it gives me background information so that then I can make my own tool for class. That's exactly what paraphrasing is. That's what you're going to be doing. So if you ever read something or you're ever watching a movie or a video, it's way too hard, back up and look up a kid's version. Start simple. Because sometimes if you watch the baby ones, you can work up to the middle school ones, and then you can work up to the high school level ones, and then you might even understand the college level ones. But it's hard to understand the college level ones when you don't understand the baby ones. So you've got to start where you are, okay? Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of where you are in your own learning. Just start where it's comfortable for you. Questions? Yes?
So for the common or unique, for number 6, would this be unique if it said mining causes 10% damage to the environment?
Yes. If you were to add a percent to anything, now you've given a specific detail that should be credited to somebody because somebody else did that research to figure it out, not you. Now, unless you're the person who did the study and you did a research study on what percent of 6th graders sneak gum in class. Okay, well now if you survey 143 kids on our team, you now can speak to that without citing or crediting anybody. It's yours. That's a percent that you can use. Okay, all right, one more thing I'd like you to look a little bit farther down on page 12. Everybody turn to page 12. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at this chart. This chart is going to be a way for us to look at an actual source, figure out how to fill it in, and then we're going to look at how do we know whether something is paraphrased, plagiarized, or quoted. And I've got some examples over here and some lines we're going to write on. But before that, I just want to point out to you in our remaining minutes, along the side here, there are times when we always should paraphrase. Always is a loose term that Mrs. Dearson uses, meaning you really can't ever say always. You can't say ever always. No. Because sometimes there are these tiny little differences. Like, for example, if something is very unique information and it's in a picture or in a table or in a graph or in a chart, well, then you would definitely want to cite it. But a lot of times, diagrams, pictures, maps, graphs, visuals should be paraphrased. A lot of times. If you look down to the next box, sometimes we paraphrase when we see a quote. Sometimes we will paraphrase it if it has something general to say that's not like stealing their researched information. Examples, we will frequently paraphrase examples, observations that people have made, videos that we have watched, we will paraphrase. And then, hold on. 2 things we should never paraphrase: measurements and statistics. Those always came from a researcher. Don't steal them. All right, that's it. Have a great day.